You walked into your family's anniversary dinner, believing it would be a night filled with laughter and warmth. But within seconds, everything shattered. Your mother leaned forward, her gaze sharp, and spoke words of comparison that silenced the room. In front of everyone, your sisters smiled with a cutting remark that pierced straight into your chest. Laughter erupted around you, while you sat frozen, feeling pushed out of your own family circle. That moment wasn't just a dinner, it was the spark that ignited a dramatic family revenge story. If you've ever felt compared within your own family, gently tap like and subscribe to stay with us through the twists and turns of the stories to come. You sat at that table, surrounded by the clinking of glasses and the hum of casual chatter, yet inside you felt like the room had gone silent. The laughter around you wasn't warm, it was sharp, mocking, and it cut through every memory you thought was safe. But to understand why those words carried such weight, you have to trace the path that brought you here, to this very moment of betrayal. Long before the comparisons, long before the smirks and the whispers, there was a childhood where dreams were stitched together with fabric scraps and colored pencils. You and your sister grew up side by side, two children sketching dresses on crumpled paper, giggling as you turned old bedsheets into gowns. Your mother's sewing machine sang late into the night, and in those soft buzzing sounds, you believed the world was wide open. Back then, your sister loved the stage. She had all the spotlight, twirling in the makeshift outfits you had crafted. You, on the other hand, found joy in the details, the careful stitches, the symmetry of a hemline, the balance of colors. Together, you were a team. Her imagination and your precision, a perfect harmony. She would beam with pride as she walked across the living room, showing off a design that carried your fingerprints, while you clapped from the corner, happy to watch her shine. But the applause always belonged to her. When she won that school art contest in 3rd grade with a design you had quietly perfected, your parents hung her ribbon on the living room wall. "Our little star," close quote, your mother said, ruffling her hair. You stood nearby, smiling, pretending you didn't notice that your name was never mentioned. And maybe, at that time, it didn't matter. Seeing her happy felt like your own victory. That's what you told yourself over and over again. Years passed, and the rhythm never changed. She dreamed in broad strokes, chaotic and unfinished, and you brought those dreams into focus. Every school project, every competition, every celebration, her face shone while you faded quietly into the background. Your parents praised her brilliance, their voices rich with pride, while your contributions slipped by unseen. It's easy to say you didn't care. Easy to say you were satisfied with the silence. But silence can be heavier than criticism. And with every moment they overlooked you, a seed of doubt began to grow. By the time you reached high school, your roles had hardened. She strutted confidently on the stage of every talent show, every charity event, while you sewed sequins into place under the dim glow of a lamp. Teachers, neighbors, even friends called her the rising star. And you were her shadow, the quiet sibling who made everything possible but was never named. Do you remember those moments when someone whispered, "She's so talented," close quote, and your chest tightened not because you disagreed, but because you knew part of that talent came from your own hands? You smiled anyway. That's what you always did. In college, the pattern continued. Professors praised her bold concepts, but they never knew you had refined the sketches that impressed them. She was dazzling, unpredictable, and flawed, but flaws can be hidden when someone else does the work of fixing them. And you were always the fixer. It might have gone on forever, this rhythm of sacrifice, if not for the moment you met someone who saw you differently. For once, attention shifted toward you, and the spotlight that had always seemed unreachable finally touched your skin. It unsettled your sister, stirred something bitter in her. But we'll get to that later. For now, what matters is how the roots of betrayal stretched all the way back to your earliest days, where love and sacrifice became tangled in silence. Looking back, you realize the story was never about one cruel remark at dinner. It was about years of being measured, compared, and diminished. And the deeper you dig, the clearer it becomes. This wasn't just neglect, it was the beginning of a quiet betrayal that shaped every part of who you became. Tell me, have you ever felt like your efforts were invisible, like the applause was always reserved for someone else while you stood in the shadows? If you know that feeling, then you understand exactly how the seeds of this revenge story were sown. As the years unfolded, your sister's rise became the family's favorite tale to tell. Every holiday dinner, every phone call home, was filled with updates of her success. "She's going places," close quote, your father said, raising a glass. "She's our pride and joy." And you would nod, smiling politely, even as the words carved deeper lines inside you. But here's the truth you couldn't admit back then. The more you supported her, the more invisible you became. Every stitch, every sketch, every late-night effort was swallowed into her spotlight, and your family never once turned to say, "This was your work, too." That's how the cracks in your heart began, not with one big betrayal, but with 1,000 little ones. And though you told yourself you didn't mind, those cracks grew. Slowly, silently, until one day they would break wide open. If you've ever felt the sting of being overlooked, take a moment now to join this journey fully. Tap that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, not because you owe it to me, but because you deserve to stay with stories that mirror your own hidden struggles. Stories that remind you you are not alone. You told yourself silence was easier. For years, you convinced yourself that standing in the shadows was a choice, that helping her shine was enough. But silence is heavy, and one day it crushed you. It began with an envelope. A simple, unassuming letter that carried the weight of your future. It was an invitation to an interview at a prestigious fashion house, the kind of opportunity that could transform everything you had worked toward. For the first time, recognition had found its way to you, not through her, not through anyone else, but directly. Yet you never saw that invitation when it mattered. Because she did. The letter had arrived, but it never reached your hands. Instead, it sat crumpled in her drawer, hidden among sketches and scraps. You discovered it weeks later while helping her pack for her big move to Los Angeles. She had already secured her spot in that very fashion house, celebrated with hugs, cheers, and champagne. Your family toasted her brilliance while you stood in the corner with a hollow smile. And then, as you sifted through her things, your fingers brushed against the folded paper. You unfolded it slowly, the words blurring as you read your own name printed on the page. It was your interview invitation, your chance, your door to a future they told you wasn't yours to open. When you asked her about it, she shrugged, her voice shaky. It must have gotten mixed up with my stuff. But you knew. In that moment, you knew it wasn't an accident. The betrayal was quiet, but it was devastating. She hadn't just stolen a letter, she had stolen your voice, your chance to be seen. And the worst part? You swallowed it. You chose silence again. You told yourself it was for the family, that exposing her would shatter everything you had tried so hard to protect. So you let her go, let her walk into a future that should have been shared. And you stayed behind, your dreams folded into the pocket of a dress no one would ever wear. Your parents never knew. Or perhaps they did, but chose not to see. They watched her leave with pride glowing in their eyes, telling anyone who would listen about their daughter's success. To them, she was proof that hard work paid off. To you, she was proof that betrayal could be disguised as ambition. And as she thrived, you withered. You took odd jobs, folding clothes at a boutique, answering phones in an office, filing papers while your sketchbook gathered dust. Nights blurred into weeks, weeks into months, and slowly, the spark that once lived in your hands dimmed. Every time you tried to draw, your pencil froze. What was the point? Meanwhile, she sent pictures, photos of red carpets, magazine spreads, her name printed under glittering headlines. Your parents clipped those articles, pinning them to the refrigerator as though each page was a medal. "She's a star," close quote, your mother said, her voice filled with pride. And you were invisible, the quiet sibling they barely mentioned. There were moments you wanted to scream, to remind them of the letter, of the stolen opportunity. But the words lodged in your throat, heavy with years of swallowing pain. Instead, you nodded, smiled, and told yourself it didn't matter. But it did. It mattered every time your mother compared you. It mattered every time your father said, "Why can't you be more like her?" Close quote. It mattered when your own achievements, however small, went unnoticed. The betrayal had fractured something inside you. And though you carried on, that fracture grew with each passing year. Do you know what it feels like when your own family doesn't believe in you? When the people who should lift you up only weigh you down with comparisons. That's what kept you awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if you were destined to live as nothing more than someone else's shadow. Still, not everyone was blind. A friend reminded you of your worth, encouraged you to draw again, urged you not to give up. But doubt is louder than hope when it's repeated daily by the people you love most. And in your heart, you began to wonder. Maybe they were right. Maybe you weren't enough. It is in those moments when you doubt yourself the most that betrayal cuts the deepest. Because it's not just about what she did to you. It's about how everyone else allowed it to happen, how they ignored your silence and never asked why you had stopped smiling. And yet, even in the quiet, something lingered. A spark, faint but alive. You didn't know it then, but that spark would one day grow into the fire that fueled your revenge story. For now, though, you remained silent, carrying the weight of an opportunity stolen and a future derailed. You kept walking, one heavy step after another, while your sister's laughter echoed through every phone call, every headline, every conversation. If you've ever felt that kind of injustice, that sting of being overlooked, betrayed, or silenced, then you understand the depth of this wound. And if you're still with me in this story, take a moment to stay connected. Hit like, subscribe if you feel drawn to, not for me, but for yourself, so you'll always have a place where your voice, your pain, and your story matter. Because unlike the silence you endured back then, here, your presence will never go unseen. The years that followed should have broken you completely. But life has a strange way of offering sparks when you least expect them. One evening, after another long day at a job that dulled your spirit, you opened your old sketchbook. The pages were worn, the edges frayed, yet something about the blank sheet pulled at you. For the first time in years, you drew not for her, not for your parents, not for applause, but for yourself. The pencil felt heavy at first, awkward even, but slowly, the lines flowed. A dress, bold and unapologetic, came to life beneath your hand. That sketch became the seed of a quiet rebellion. You began to rebuild in secret. Night after night, while the city outside slept, you filled page after page with designs that carried your own voice. They weren't polished at first, but they were yours, and that made all the difference. Each drawing chipped away, you agreed. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of fabric swatches, late-night sketch sessions, and the thrill of watching your designs step into the world. The collection debuted with quiet strength, earning praise from boutiques and blogs. For the first time, your name appeared in print not as an afterthought, not hidden in the margins, but in bold. Word traveled quickly. And just as your star began to rise, news reached you. Your sister was faltering. Her last collections had failed to impress, critics questioned her originality, and whispers spread that she might lose her position. It was poetic, almost cruel, how the roles had shifted. She, once untouchable, now clung to a slipping thread, while you, the invisible one, began to climb. Then came the moment neither of you could avoid. A prestigious department store announced a competition for an exclusive line. The finalists. You and her. The air thickened with unspoken history. You had once handed her victory after victory, sacrificing your chances so she could shine. But this time, you weren't standing behind her. You were standing opposite her. Preparation consumed you. Days blurred into nights in Daniel's studio, where walls were covered with mood boards and fabrics in every shade imaginable. You poured every wound, every silence, every stolen opportunity into your designs. The collection was more than clothing, it was a statement. Structured yet fluid, intricate yet bold, each piece told a story of survival and reclamation. Meanwhile, you caught glimpses of her work. It was loud, frantic, desperate. Her designs leaned heavily on trends from past seasons, patched together without the fire she once carried. She was no longer the golden child creating visions that dazzled, she was scrambling to hold onto a fading crown. The day of the presentation arrived. The room buzzed with anticipation, executives seated in polished rows, their pens poised above crisp notepads. You stood at the front, heart racing, wearing one of your own creations. A jacket with sharp cuts softened by delicate embroidery. It felt like armor and freedom all at once. You spoke with clarity, guiding them through the story behind each design. Not once did your voice falter, because those clothes weren't fabricated illusions, they were you. Your resilience, your defiance, your truth, stitched into every seam. When you finished, the applause was steady, thoughtful, genuine. She presented after you. Her voice was polished, but her collection lacked soul. The executives nodded politely, but their eyes had already lit up elsewhere at your work. Days later, the verdict came. You'd won. The news spread quickly. Blogs celebrated your vision, boutiques clamored for your designs, and the industry whispered your name with curiosity and respect. For the first time, you weren't compared, you were recognized. But with victory came backlash. She lashed out, posting online, accusing you of stealing her ideas, of sabotaging her career. Her words were sharp, desperate, and for a moment, they stung. Yet you didn't respond. You didn't need to. The world had already seen the truth stitched into your work. This was your revenge, not through cruelty, not through lies, but through undeniable success. You had spent years giving her your strength, sacrificing your chances, swallowing your pain. Now, by simply choosing yourself, you had rewritten the story. And yet, even in triumph, the weight of history lingered. Winning didn't erase the betrayals. It didn't erase the nights of doubt or the years of invisibility. But it gave you something far more powerful. Proof. Proof that you were never the shadow. Proof that your worth had never depended on their applause. The revenge wasn't in watching her stumble. It was in standing tall, finally free from the silence. The girl who once clapped quietly from the corner had become a woman commanding the room. And though she tried to twist the narrative, accusing, blaming, spinning stories to protect her pride, you no longer carried the burden of explaining yourself. For the first time, the only voice that mattered was your own. This was the moment your revenge story reached its crescendo. Victory should have tasted sweet. And in many ways, it did. Your name was finally being spoken with respect, your designs praised for their originality, your voice no longer hidden beneath someone else's shadow. Yet as the applause faded, another sound rose to fill the silence, the insistent ringing of your phone. At first, you ignored it. You had spent years answering calls that only brought more comparisons, more demands. But the ringing continued, persistent and sharp, until it felt like a reminder of a chain you thought you had broken. When you finally picked up, it wasn't congratulations you heard. It was panic. Your parents' voices trembled as they spoke of her downfall. The accusations she had thrown at you online had backfired, unraveling into a storm that swept away the last of her credibility. Clients abandoned her, critics dismissed her, and the fashion house she had clung to finally let her go. "She's your sister," your mother said, her tone urgent, almost pleading. "She needs you now." You stood by the window, phone pressed to your ear, watching the city lights blur into streaks. The words hung in the air like an old refrain. How many times had you heard them before? How many times had you been asked to set aside your own pain, your own future, for her sake? Your father added quietly, "You've done so well. Surely, you can help her find her way again." The weight of their request pressed against you, familiar yet unbearable. Images flashed through your mind: the hidden letter, the stolen opportunities, the laughter at the dinner table, the way she had smiled when everyone else compared you. You remember the years of silence you had endured, the quiet sacrifices no one acknowledged, the betrayal that had cut deeper than words could measure. And then you remembered her smirk, the one that night when she said she earned your monthly salary in just 8 hours. Your chest tightened, but this time, not with pain, with clarity. For the first time, you didn't feel the need to explain, to justify, to soften your refusal. You had carried enough. "Finish your 8 hours first," you said, your voice calm but unyielding. The silence on the line was heavy. You could almost hear your mother's face crumpling, your father shifting uncomfortably. But you didn't waver. Not this time. You ended the call, and with it, you ended years of being tethered to expectations that were never yours to bear. The days that followed felt lighter, though not without ache. Family bonds are complicated, and cutting away from them, even partially, is never simple. Yet with every step you took away, you felt yourself stand taller. You were no longer the sibling who stayed in the shadows, no longer the daughter who nodded quietly while others claimed your victories. Still, memories lingered. Some nights, you found yourself staring at old sketches from childhood, drawings where your hands and hers had worked side by side. There had been joy once, innocence before ambition turned to betrayal. A part of you grieved for that lost connection, but another part understood that grief was part of the price for reclaiming your dignity. Opportunities expanded quickly after the competition. Your studio grew, orders poured in, and articles celebrated your journey as a new voice in fashion. You built a team, people who believed in your vision, who didn't see you as a shadow, but as a leader. Every morning, when you walked into that space buzzing with energy, you felt a surge of purpose. Yet even as success surrounded you, the echoes of your family's words sometimes returned. Doubt doesn't disappear overnight. It lingers like an old scar, a reminder of battles fought. But this time, you didn't let it dictate your path. You channeled it, poured it into designs that spoke louder than any comparison ever could. Meanwhile, news of her decline spread quietly. She moved out of the spotlight, her name slipping from headlines that once celebrated her every step. Occasionally, mutual acquaintances whispered updates, painting a picture of someone struggling to find footing in a world that no longer applauded. Once, you might have rushed to her side, offering your strength even as it drained you. But not now. You had learned the cost of giving endlessly without recognition. You had learned that sometimes, the most powerful act of love for yourself is to step away. In this space of distance, you began to heal. Slowly, the resentment that had fueled your rise gave way to something steadier: self-respect. The revenge had already unfolded, not in cruelty, but in the life you built, in the way you stood tall without needing anyone's validation. Your parents tried again, appearing at your door one evening. Their eyes carried both pride and desperation, torn between the daughter who had risen and the one who had fallen. They spoke of family, of forgiveness, of duty. But you listened with a heart that had finally learned the difference between obligation and sacrifice. "I've given enough," you told them softly. "This is where I stop." The conversation ended there, not with shouting, not with tears, but with a silence that spoke louder than either. You knew they didn't fully understand, perhaps they never would. But for once, you didn't need them to. What mattered was that you understood yourself. And that understanding became the foundation for what came next. As weeks turned into months, your focus sharpened. Projects blossomed into collections, collaborations expanded into partnerships, and soon your designs walked across stages that once felt like distant dreams. Each step forward was a declaration, not of revenge anymore, but of reclamation. You had proven what needed to be proven. Now, you were simply living. Still, whenever the memory of that anniversary dinner resurfaced, the smirks, the laughter, the words that cut deep, you no longer felt crushed. Instead, you felt steady. Because those moments, as cruel as they were, had brought you here. Without them, you might never have found the strength to claim your own light. And so, as the curtain began to fall on this chapter, you weren't weighed down by bitterness. You were prepared. Prepared to close the door on the past, to step fully into the life you had built. Prepared to let the final act of your revenge story unfold, not with fury, but with quite undeniable strength. This was no longer about her. It was about you. and you were finally ready to end the story on your terms. By the end, you realized your story was never about competing with her, it was about reclaiming yourself. The years of being overlooked, of carrying burdens that weren't yours, had shaped you into someone stronger than the silence they tried to trap you in. The betrayal hurt, yes, but it also carved out the space where resilience took root. Now, when you look back, you don't see yourself as the shadow at the table or the sibling always asked to sacrifice. You see the person who chose dignity over comparison, truth over silence, and freedom over obligation. That choice is what turned pain into power and betrayal into a story of triumph. This revenge story isn't defined by bitterness, it's defined by the quiet strength of walking away, of choosing your own light, no matter who tried to dim it. And that strength is yours to carry forward, long after the laughter and the cruel words have faded. If you've stayed with this journey until now, thank you. Your presence matters. If stories like this resonate with you, feel free to gently tap like and subscribe, so you can be part of every new chapter we share together. You can be part of every new chapter we share together. You can be part of every new chapter we share together. You can be part of every new chapter we share together. You can be part of every new chapter we share together. You can be part of every new chapter we share together. You can be part of every new chapter we share together. You can be part of every new chapter